everybody, welcome back. This is going to be our third part of finding slope of lines. So this is still our first objective, but in part 3 you can see now we're dealing with the equation. So let's refresh our memory and come back to the beginning, and in this section, here's where we want to use slope-intercept. I'm very concerned that we know this and this alone because it makes finding slope so much easier. What's special about slope-intercept? First of all, the y is always by itself. It's always y equals. The term with the x comes next, and then there's this regular number which is represented by y-intercept. We want to remember that because we're going to be tasked with doing several things with this. So, when I come back here, take a look at what I'm giving you. Look at number 14. On 14 here, is that in slope-intercept form? Does that match the form y equals mx plus b? When I look at that, I'd say, yeah, it's absolutely solve for y. The x term comes first, and then the b. So let's match them up. M is the same as 3 over 2, and the y-intercept is -3. And we can actually write m is 3 over 2, and if we needed it, you could tell me that b is -3, which really meant that the y-intercept was 0, -3. However, for this, all they wanted was the slope, so guess what? We're done. We just found the slope of that line because it was staring us in the face. This is one of the easier ones to do as long as you know how the formula works. When I come over to 13, you can see again, this is in the form y equals mx plus b. The difference here is that m is equal to -1, and b is equal to 0. All we want is that slope. So again, I'm done. You can see this is going to be a real quick video, right? Let's try 15. Don't get in the habit. We can see again, that is equal to slope-intercept, and we can probably already tell there's my slope. But take the 3 seconds and actually write that out. Don't just circle it. Actually take the moment to write it properly. We want to get in the habit of doing things properly, doing them well. So just taking the easy way out, we don't want to try that. I think probably on 16 you're going to be able to do that though. And when we come back to 17 and 18, again, we should be able to point those out. Make sure you take care of the minus signs as well. When we get to 19 in this next section, we got a problem. These are not solved for y. And now we're going to have to do something to figure this out. Well, unfortunately, we're going to have to go back to our last day and our last night in night school and actually solve this equation. So I don't really want that to be a squiggly line, I suppose. But we're going to have to move stuff across that equal sign. So, what do we want on that left-hand side? Well, all I want is y equals. So I want to work on getting rid of everything else. So the first thing I see I can get rid of is this 5. And I can do that by subtracting 5x from both sides. Why do I choose that? Because 5 minus 5 is 0. And I've just canceled that side out. In order to make this be equal, I have to add or subtract the same thing from both sides. I have not touched this -y, -5x minus 3. And while I'm at it, I know that x term has to come first, so I'm going to go ahead and write it first. The same rule applies as far as dividing. Divide both sides by -1. And what do I get? Well, I'm going to get y equals 5x plus plus 3. That process alone is simply putting it into slope-intercept form. Now we don't want to lose sight of what the question asked me, which was, what is the slope? Well, now we have experience and we can say that the slope is 5. So this section is really predicated on, can we solve this for y? It's usually a two-step problem. On 20, again, make our line. I want y equals, don't lose track of what you're trying to do. And as I go through, the first thing I'm going to do is subtract the x, like so. These cancel out. The 5y I did not touch. Negative 4x minus 10. Final step, I divide by the y. I want that y by itself. So y equals, and now I've got a problem. And I'm going to make an intermediate step here. I successfully canceled that out. I have negative 4 over 5x minus 10 over 5. What do you guys think I need to do at this point in order to make this a successful problem? We've talked about it already. I need those slopes in simplest form. I need all fractions in simplest form. So I need to check on my calculator to either of these fractions simplify. The slope does not, but you bet that y-intercept did. Then I'm just going to identify my slope there for my answer to this particular question. Let's go ahead and do a couple more. I think this one probably deserves a few examples done out so you can really see what's going on. A lot of our year is going to be based around solving for y. So it's worth to take some extra time here and really look into it. So, on number 21, again, y equals, don't lose track of what you're trying to do. Up top, let's subtract 7x. Those cancel. I'm left with negative 4y equals negative 7x plus 8. Divide by the negative 4, and let's go ahead and solve it. I'm getting a little too far ahead of myself. Let's just make sure we're doing it properly so we can see what's going on. So there's me dividing by negative 4. And now I'm going to, again, make this intermediate step. Because I want to pay close attention to each of these fractions. Put them in my calculator, math, enter, enter. But I'll get that the slope is positive 7 over 4, and 8 divided by negative 4 is negative 2. For this problem, the solution is just the slope of 7 over 4. Okay. Now, we would like to check this. Wouldn't it be great if we could somehow check our answer to see if it was correct? Well, unfortunately, our checking on our calculator is going to be a little tough because our calculator is set up that we need it in y equals. So unfortunately, we have to go back a little old school in order to check our answer. So what I'm going to do on number 22, I'm going to go ahead and give you that the y equals equation. Now you're going to have to be a part of me for 1 second. I believe that the solve for y equation is that 22, solve for y is that, which would make the slope negative 5/3. However, I did that in my head without the aid of a calculator, and I'm trying to make a movie and a video at the same time, so I'm trying to make sure everything's working and everything's going, so I don't trust this answer. So, here's what we're going to do. We're going to pick a point. And what I'm going to say is I'm going to pick a value for x. So pick anything you want, but let's make it something reasonable, and probably the most easy thing to pick would be what would happen to this equation when x is 0. Well, let's look. And our calculator will solve this for us. Our calculator will do that simplifying as long as I enter it in. But what I find out is that when x is 0, y is negative 2. What I want to do is check that here. What happens in this equation? If I've made my equations the same, I better get that x equals negative, or y equals negative 2. So the question is, well, first of all, how about I actually write that properly? Or else I won't get it. So now, let's solve this. Well, I'm going to end up with 3y equal negative 6. Divide by y. And look at that. Check. Check. Yeah, I just guaranteed myself, more or less, that I do have the same equation. I use more or less because you should pick a couple other points just to be sure. We should come back down here and try it when x equals 1 and do the same thing. But I'm satisfied enough, because again, this was just checking my answer. I'm satisfied enough here that, yeah, I do have the correct equation. So this whole process here, I'm going to put a big old star next to it, because we haven't solved anything at all. I gave you the solution, but this is how we go about checking our answer. To actually get the answer to this problem, the slope is negative 5 over 3. But this whole process here is how to check. Did you successfully go from here to here and do it correctly? All right, let's turn the page. And we can see now on this next page that our equations are all the same. I'm asking for the same exact thing every single time. Even when I get down to the problems like 29 and 30, yeah, they're not quite the same setup, but these all involve solving for y. As I go to the next page, again, obviously this is an important part. You need to be able to solve all of these for y. When I get to 36, I can see, yeah, we're probably going to have an issue with 36. So on 36, let's go ahead and take a moment and do that one, because that one is scary, isn't it, with those fractions there? So our question is, how do we solve and deal with the fractions? To be honest, I don't worry about it. I come here and make my line. And the first thing I'm going to do is add 1/6 to both sides. And now I'm going to remember how to get rid of that fraction from the y. It's not divide by 1/3, it's times 3. And I'm going to do every term, I'm just going to do this as a distributive property, times 3. These will cancel out, and I'll be left with y equals. What I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to do 1/6 times 3 and 1 times 3. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm not doing 1/6. I'm not doing a fraction times something else without the aid of a calculator. So I'm going to go ahead and do 1/6 times 3. And you can see it did give me a decimal, but it gives me 1/2 as my answer. So again, using this convert to fraction button can be a great help to you. You don't have to worry about, oh, these fractions are awful. All right. So when we come back here, I now know that that was 1/2 x plus 3. 1/2 x plus 3. Which which means now my slope is 1/2. Don't lose sight of your end goal. Your end goal is not solve for y. Your end goal is what is the slope of that line. All right, as I fast forward here, we can see that all of these were the same. Now, I will tell you that we need to do another objective in here. So this objective wasn't labeled, so I'm going to label it right here, that starting with 37, I'm going to do 2b, which is slightly different, but I'm just going to label it parallel and perpendicular. And what we're going to do, we're going to come back to this in 1 minute. Before that, you've got a pretty tall order on your hands. I've skipped over several problems, and it is that important that you get the practice of solving these for y. What I would like you to do is go ahead and solve these all now. You should have all the slopes all the way through, all the way up until number 37. Once you get there, pause this video now, and once you get to that point, unpause it, and I'm going to start off at the end of this video and give you the solutions to all of those problems. So pause this video now, complete those problems, and then when you're ready, unpause it, and you'll see that in a couple seconds, I'm going to put all of the solutions up so far in that section so you can see, are you solving for y right? It's that important that it's worth stopping here. Okay, now I mean it. Go ahead and pause the video now. Okay, everybody, welcome back. And what I've put up here is simply the answers to that section that we went through. You'll notice I'm missing 12 and 37. That's fine. I just want to give you enough answers here that you can see whether or not what you're doing is correct. So these are just the slopes. So it's assumed that you can solve for y if you can find the slope here. So take a moment, go ahead and pause this at this point. What we're going to do is once you finish these and you're ready to go, we're going to move on to that part B section. And the rest of the night will go a lot quicker. We've gone over a couple of hardest things at this moment. So make sure we're good to go. And when you're ready, go ahead and open the second objective video here.